All right, guys, I just want to welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today, me and Nick here are doing our 2025 preview and prediction for the Kansas Jayhawks, getting things started with this coaching staff. Lance Leopold, through 4 seasons, 22-28 record, which is a phenomenal mark for anyone that has coached Kansas in a long time, so no shame in being below 500 there. Matt Lubeck and Jim Zabrowski will be the offensive coordinators, and then the second year in the role for defensive coordinator DK McDonald. This offseason, top 40 portal class, 73rd in the high school ranks. And last year, they went 5-7. But, Nick, they lost 5 games by 1 score. And consecutively, they beat BYU, Iowa State, and Colorado. Not only did they beat them, they knocked all of those teams out of the college football playoff. Iowa State still had a chance there at the end. But they absolutely ruined this conference's chances, Nick, of having 2 teams in the playoff. What do you think of the run they had last year? Because, again, the record was poor, but they beat some really good teams and held this conference back from lofty goals that they had collectively.
2024 was a very weird year for Kansas. They played in multiple different stadiums as their home stadium, in Lawrence being renovated. So they played in the local MLS stadium, Child Mercies Park for Sporting Kansas City. They also played in the Chiefs Arrowhead Stadium a couple of games. They bounced around a lot, a little uncertainty there, and they started off the season poor, right? They were 1-5, losing bad losses at West Virginia, at Arizona State, which that loss ended up looking pretty good come the end of the season, but lost to UNLV at home, in quotations, in one of those games at the MLS stadium. They lost to Illinois, put up a good fight in that one though, and they looked like they were having a dead season. It really looked bad with the schedule that was looming ahead with trips to Kansas State, hosting Iowa State, a trip to BYU, and hosting Colorado. But they beat those 3 teams, Iowa State, BYU, and Colorado, and looked really good, especially in the 2 games against Iowa State and Colorado. They were dominant in those games, and they really showed strong defensive football against BYU in a tough environment for a team that was hunting for a playoff berth. I was quite impressed with the resolve they showed at the end of the season. Yes, it was kind of ended on a whimper there. They missed a bowl by losing badly at Baylor. That was certainly disappointing if you're a Kansas fan, but they showed some promise on offense and defense in that second half of the season, particularly on defense in a lot of those games where the defense looked a lot better. They were playing as a more cohesive unit, and they were really putting together some good results here. I think Lance Leopold can certainly build on that from last year and push into 2025.
Now let's go ahead and look at this 2025 unit, starting with the offense. This is a unit that was pretty respectable last year across the board. They do lose a tremendous amount of starters, especially at the skilled positions. They do return Jalen Daniels at quarterback, and this is a guy I think that the hype is kind of slowed down on. He is a tremendous athlete, though, allows him to be productive in the run game. He also escapes the pocket where he can throw on the run. Great speed, has some impressive change of direction, has shown a nice release, has velocity and accuracy to fire in the tight windows. I think his arm strength and accuracy does waver a bit downfield, despite being a good athlete. He isn't an elite game changer of his legs like you'd think he would be. Mechanics and vision hasn't really taken many strides in his career. This is a guy, Nick, no longer are people talking about after a pretty poor season where he had 57% comp rate, 12 interceptions. Of course, he missed 2023 due to injury, so his bounce back year wasn't all that impressive. Is this a year for him to really get back into the national mainstream light, or do you think it's just going to be another average year for Daniels?
2024 was a bad year for Daniels. He was coming off that injury, obviously a tough rehab for him. 57% comp rate, 2,400 yards, 14 touchdowns, 12 picks. Just not a good number there. The 12 interceptions is a gross number, certainly. Had 439 on the ground, 4.7, and 6 touchdowns. Obviously, again, still kind of getting him back into the groove of being able to be an effective rusher in the offensive system here. I think Daniels will have a better season. I think he'll certainly get closer to some of that high-level football that we expect out of him. I think last year was a bit of an outlier because he was coming back from those injuries, and really his season was really poor in the first half. The splits between the first and second half are certainly a little bit different. He struggled mightily in those first couple of games. He got a lot better as the season got older and more comfortable in the system. I think a full season, playing full football, playing full speed again, all practice, all off season. I think Daniels will be a solid quarterback this year. I don't think he's going to really light up the world and be a contender for one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, but I think he'll be a steady hand, cut down on the turnovers, and improve his rushing attack on the ground, use that footwork a little bit better, and be a key part of this offense.
Now, of course, the biggest loss is at running back in Devin Neal. Daniel Highshow, though, has been a pretty good number 2 for a couple of years. Wasn't very healthy last season, but in the 2 years prior had pretty good production when he was on the field. Also had a season-ending injury in 2022, though. Well, Sean Williams, I think, is a phenomenal addition. Only saw a few touches last year, but had 800-plus yards in 2023 for Iowa. He's expected to take a big amount of carries this fall. Also, a redshirt freshman from Frisco, Texas, and Harry Stewart rounds out their group. He only played 2 games last season. So I think they still have a pretty good 1-2 punch, and Daniels, he will still be heavily involved in the run game, Nick, so I don't expect too much of a fall-off, but Neal was an elite playmaker for them for a couple of seasons, back-to-back seasons of 1,200-plus yards and exactly 16 touchdowns, so a boatload of consistency that is going to be departing. I think they'll be all right, though.
I think they'll be all right as well. I think Hinshaw is a really solid player to have. 376, 5.8 yards per attempt, 3 scores for him, 47 yards per game in his 8 games last year. He battled some injuries. He was, lacking some touches here and there, but he's still a really solid player. I think Williams is a good add as well from Iowa. Didn't do anything last year, only had 11 touches for 21 yards, but his 2023 season was quite strong. 821, 4.8, and 1 score. Also had a receiving touchdown in 2023. Obviously, they're going to hope that he gets back to that 2023 level. He just was not involved in the offense at all last year. All of his touches came in the first 3 weeks this season after September 14th against Troy. He didn't, see the field at all, probably to preserve redshirt, I would imagine, at this moment in time. But he's a player that's solid, right? At 5'11 or 5'10, 215. He's a really good back. I think he's a good player to have in your backfield. A nice little add out of the portal for Leopold.
Now you look to the wide receiver group that is transfer heavy after some good departments of talent. Bryson Canty had two 700-plus yard seasons in 4 years at Columbia. He's a nice outside pass catcher, 6'2", 200. Cam Pickett was also an outside pass catcher, 6', 200 with a 500-plus yard season for Ball State. Levi Wentz, 6'2", 205, had a really good year for Albany with 621 yards. Keaton Kubeka, 6'2", 215, did not play last year, though. Doug Emlin, on the other hand, caught only a few passes. They also picked up Emmanuel Henderson, who did nothing in 3 years at Alabama. No one on the roster returns that gain snaps in the slot, so we need to figure that out, but have some solid size, I think, collectively. Not a bad group. Seems like they have some versatility, Nick. I think they did a pretty respectable job, as good as one can do. Of course, Kansas is still going to be a challenging, task to get guys to come out of the portal. They did a pretty good job here, added plenty of different faces, and I think they'll be all right at pass catcher.
It didn't do a terrible job here. It's certainly the depth is concerning here. You wonder what the slot's going to look like. I think you're probably going to play Pickett in the slot, although he didn't really play in the slot a lot at Ball State. But I think you're probably going to play him. He's probably your best asset there. Right now, 528 for him last year. 10.8 yards per attempt, 2 scores. He also had 2 rushing touchdowns. So he'll find a way to be involved. I think he was okay for Ball State last year. A guy that you throw in the slot, could get some good looks out of there. Bryson Canty from Columbia, interesting ad from an Ivy League school there. Another ad from New York in Levi Wentz, who went to Albany. He also previously had Old Dominion, didn't do a whole lot for Old Dominion. 2 interesting FCS ads they bring in. Then Emmanuel Henderson, he didn't do anything at Alabama, only had 4 grabs, although they were for 82 yards, 20.5 yards per grab. So he was, sometimes involved in some big plays, but didn't do a lot outside of that. He didn't play in 2023 as well, but there is still some high upside potential with Henderson that could be really solid at your wide receiver Z position here. This is a unit that's, got Doug Emil who didn't play any last year, Keaton Kabaka as well, who didn't do anything. Younger players on the roster, hoping to get some more experience. Definitely a weak unit, probably the weakest part of this offense, something I'm certainly a little bit worried about, but maybe if Daniels is playing full football, is accurate, he can get the ball to these guys and they make something happen.
I do think Deshaun Haneke can be a solid tight end for them as well. So I think it's a respectable group, especially for the scheme they run, where they're going to be a lot of run heavy, so they don't have to lean as much on these pass catchers. Look at the offensive line. Calvin Clements will slot in at left tackle. He got 2 starts late in the year, and he was good in pass protection in those appearances. Tavaki Tuka Olavatu comes over from UCLA. No real time to his name. He's going to compete with James Livingston, who only saw 9 snaps last year, so a lot of inexperience at the left guard spot. Center does return Bryce Foster, who had a nice resurgent season following a horrible end to his time at Texas A&M. He was great in the run game, allowed 0 sacks. I think he's one of the nation's best when playing his top ball. Nick, remember this guy was a freshman sensation for the Aggies, and things just did not go his way. Looks like he's back to his true form, though. Noah Gorzaika at right tackle wasn't very good in his near 50 snaps. They also picked up DeAndre Harper, 6'6", 320 from Northwest Missouri State. Jack Tanner started at left tackle last year for Tulane. He was awful, though. Tyler Mercer comes over from North Texas. He was the starting center. It was very good for them, so I'm not sure how they're going to make this all work. And, of course, they have Kobe Baines coming back at right guard, 6'4", 315. He was phenomenal in pass protection, gave up 0 sacks as well. Solid options here. I think it's going to be a quality group. They have size and some experience. And for a couple years now under Leopold, Nick, this has been a very underrated offensive line. We thought last year would be a top 25 group, and it indeed was. They're probably going to be looking for that same notion once again. This is a pretty impressive group, and they're pretty deep due to their work in the portal.
Yeah, I like what they have here. This is a decent offensive line that was really solid. I think they'll be good in run protection as well this year. They'll be solid in pass block as well. I think Clements is a good left tackle. I like what they added at left guard potentially as well there. Foster, he's if he can get back to his full form at center, he'll be really good. Baines and then the right tackle as well are 2 strong players. Amir Herning maybe will move around in there. DeAndre Harper is not a horrible ad, as was Tyler Mercer. 2 interesting ads, plus Jack Tanner. All 3 guys that are younger players and may find a way to be involved in this O-line. I like this unit here, a big physical physical, solid unit. Leopold's been trying to do some work in the trenches, and I think it's going to pay off a little bit this year. I like what this unit can do, certainly, and good little part of this offense.
Now we move to the offensive verdict. I think the Jayhawks offense should be good despite the loss of key pass catchers, and the stud that is Devin Neal, solid portal class as they focused on adding productive pass catchers, offensive line depth, and of course another running back alongside Jalen Daniels, who is an above-average starting quarterback in this conference. They'll be a good unit. I think they'll score at least 28 points per game. It's right around where they were last season. So I think this is going to be a B unit, Nick. I don't know how they can really take that next level without this quarterback progressing. If he really does, though, at a high level, then they can certainly approach 35 points per game, and that would certainly be bumped up to a B+. Right now, I'm going to go with a more modest approach.
Yeah, I think a B is a fair grade for this unit right now. I think they have a quarterback that's a guy that's been around in the program for a while. Sure, he had some inconsistencies last year, but Daniels is still a good quarterback. The running back room should be pretty solid, even if it does lose Neal. The offensive line is a very strong physical unit that I like a lot. The wide receiver room, yes, it lacks depth, but there are some guys that potentially step up and be solid pieces overall. This is a decent enough offense for the Big 12.
I move to the defensive side of the ball for Kansas. This group has shown so much improvement under Leopold, and it's going to be hard to do that once again, though, with the return of only 2 starters. You start up front. Dean Miller, he's the top returning starter off the edge, was good versus the run, also had a team-high 6 sacks. Cole Petras only saw a few snaps of his own. Dylan Brooks, a redshirt senior that has barely played. You have Justice Finkley coming over from Texas. He saw 500-plus snaps in 3 years and was a solid player. So I think this edge group overall is vastly unproven, though, but they do have some respectable players. Move to the interior. They get back DJ Withers, 6'4", 295, has some quality numbers, but he wasn't all that consistent. Tommy Dunn has played 700-plus snaps over the last 3 years, but has been a silent player despite being 305 pounds. Gage Keys in his 4th different school in 4 years, but was here at Kansas back in 2023. He'll be in the rotation. This will be the best place for him to play. You know, he saw 300-plus reps in his first tenure here, so I think they're glad to have him back. Blake Harold was a quality run defender in his redshirt freshman campaign, a 295-pounder from Iowa. Solid group on the interior. Again, I think the edge group's a little bit more unproven, but I think this will be a quality group, Nick. I don't expect them to get burned too bad against the run. I think that the pass rush, it's probably going to be lackluster overall, but I still think the defensive line rotation is going to be the biggest strength of this defense, top to bottom.
Yeah, I like what this defensive line can do. I think the pass rush will be a little bit better than you're giving it credit for. I do think, Dean Miller is a solid player for this team. 32 total tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 pass breakups. Withers had 21 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and a pass breakup. That's 9 sacks right there between the two of them. Blake Harold, 20 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, a sack for him as well. Tommy Dunn, he's a bigger body, 16 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks for him last year. He ends up, returning in this. He's pretty solid in there. I think they made a nice move here, bringing in Justice Finkley, that is from Texas. He had 14 total tackles and 4 QB hurries, 2 sacks in 2023. Didn't do a whole lot. The product that he would Trustville, a very highly ranked high school football program in the state of Alabama. Gage Keys, he's bounced around a ton. He was at Auburn, didn't do anything at Auburn last year. Don't think he even played a snap for Auburn. Comes back to Kansas. 21 total tackles, 4 QB hurries in 2023 for him, so he's a guy that they think could potentially get back to that kind of form here. I think this is a good defensive line. I like this front unit a little bit here. I like the rotation. The depth is really key. The pass rush may be a little bit weaker for some people's liking, but I still think it's a really solid pass rushing group overall. I think it'll be a good unit and probably the best part of this defense.
I move to the middle of the Jayhawks defense. Jason Gilliam, now linebacker, is the only notable returnee from last year's team. He wasn't very good at only 100 snaps. They went to the portal, though, to pick up plenty of reinforcements. Bang Ali Kamara started 2 years at Pittsburgh and was quite sound for them. He has versatility as a pass rusher, so I like this addition from them. Joseph Sipp, a 225-pounder from Bowling Green. He's coming off 2 straight 70-plus tackle seasons. Also had 11 TFL and 7 sacks this past year. Trey Lathan was a starter for West Virginia last fall. He was pretty poor across the board. Depth not very pronounced, but I think this is a good group of starters, Nick, mainly because of what they did in the portal. I think guys like Kamara and Sipp are going to be tremendous, and Lathan, he's a young player that's going to progress, so right now it might be a bit of a weakness, but I think they're really going to emerge throughout the year.
Gillum is your returning player with 13 tackles and a tackle for loss plus a pass breakup. He didn't do a whole lot. He's just a good depth piece to have a guy that's been around the program. Kamara, I think, was a really solid add. Didn't really do as much in 2024. He only played in 3 games, limited appearances for him at South Carolina, but he was really good at Pittsburgh prior to that. 55 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 5 QB hurries in 2023 for the Panthers. Did not really do anything for South Carolina last year. Joseph Sipp's a great add from Bowling Green, a guy that really has gotten better as time has gone on. 73 total tackles in 2023, 79 in 2024, 11.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks. in 2024. So he was dominant. He could really put some pressure on the quarterback. Expect him to be involved in that. Trey Latham coming over from West Virginia in conference grab there, 79 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 3 QB hurries. He's a guy that I think West Virginia probably wanted to keep, but they get him in there, they bring him in, and he should be a really solid add here. A new look linebacking core that I like the 3 adds from the portal. They should be really solid pieces there. I think this is a high upside linebacking core.
They move to the secondary for Kansas, where they replaced both starting corners that were very good and played pretty much every snap for them. So they're going to have to replace 2 very important players, Jameel Croft Jr. and Jalen Todd. Both got on the field last year, but sparingly at best. Devin Dye, mainly at safety, but he plays nickel and can move out wide if needed. Picked up Jaleel Hurley, who only saw a few snaps for Alabama last year. DJ Graham played a good bit in his 3 seasons at Oklahoma. Was a full-time starter last year for Utah State and was pretty good for them. So you can pencil him in as a starter for the Hawks. Laquan Robinson comes over from Auburn, not seeing the field last year, but he's likely to contend for the slot. Look at the safety group. They returned Taylor Davis, who was exceptional against the run. Was limited to only 8 games, though. Mason Ellis returns after only a few snaps across 4 games. Liverick Rawls played 100-plus snaps across the last 3 years at Oklahoma State collectively. Did see extensive action this past year and was pretty good in coverage, but he was inconsistent against the run. Solid group here. I think it's a weak spot for them top to bottom. Just lose so many starters in the back end at Kansas. It's not just an easy transition, the new faces, Nick. I think the portal certainly helps in the fall off, but playmaking at cornerback is significantly going to step back as you lose Kobe Bryant and Mello Dotson, Nick. They're not just going to replace those guys with ease. That makes me give the secondary the weak point of this defense.
Yeah, it is a weak point in this defense, just a weaker part of this defense overall. Taylor Davis returns 33 total tackles, a tackle for loss, a pass breakup for him. Last year, he was solid. Devin Dye, he returns as well, 13 total tackles, 1 interception for him. Jalen Dye had 14 total tackles, 1 tackle for loss here. And then Jalen Todd had 9 total tackles, 2 pass breakups. They lack a returning amount of production in terms of interceptions, only 1 returning interception from last year. So I have to find a way to get good production out of these new cornerbacks that they add here. Rawls comes over from Oklahoma State, 23 total tackles, a pick, and 3 pass breakups for him. He was not bad for the Pokes. At safety, DJ Graham going to probably lock down one of those cornerback positions, 42 total tackles, 2 picks, 2 pass breakups at Utah State, was previously in the Big 12 with Oklahoma. He was not bad for them. Laquan Robinson comes over from Auburn, where he really didn't do anything, only played in 1 game, the opener against Alabama A&M. Outside of that, he is a former JUCO product, so maybe something from him. And then Hurley comes over from Alabama, where he did not do anything in that game, only played in the blowout win over Missouri last year. So definitely a unit that's got some interesting pieces, but a wait-and-see approach for me. I think it's the weakest part of this defense by far, and I think this is still a really strong defense with the secondary. I think they struggled at points last year, right? That was the worst part of this defense. They gave up 239 yards per game. I'm expecting them to be a similar unit. Nothing really that great. Still, below probably 100 to 110 range in the nation. Just not a very good unit overall, and they should be successful to getting beat in the air throughout the season.
I look at the verdict for this defense. Kansas has done a really good job from going from having the worst D in the nation to fielding a quality group here on a year-to-year basis that can find stops and make plays. 28 sacks and 12 picks are very good numbers, Nick. That's nice balance. They lose a lot of that, though, and they revamp a lot of this defense through the portal. I think the front 7 will be fine, but the secondary could be in for some major troubles. Might take a step back altogether, but likely not going to be that bad of a unit. I think they'll certainly be competitive. I went ahead and give it a B-, Nick. Do you think it's a little bit too harsh, or do you think that's appropriate?
No, I think a B- is appropriate. You're losing 11 of those 12 interceptions from last year, losing some of the sacks as well. I do think the defensive line is a good unit. I think they'll have a lot of key pieces there that could be really solid here. I think the Finkley add from Texas was a good one. I think Witters and Dunn plus Miller are really solid pieces there. Maybe Gage Keys could be involved in that as well. A new look linebacking core. I don't normally advocate for a completely revamped unit here, but I think the 3 adds at linebacker are solid. The secondary added some interesting pieces, but a lot of guys that have a lot to prove, and they lose a ton of that production in terms of tackles and interceptions, so that does worry me on a secondary that was already the weakest part of the defense last year. I'm expecting some regression there, which I think could certainly cause some problems for this team against the pass, but overall I think they'll be strong against the run and be a good unit overall in this conference.
I move to the schedule and the prediction for Kansas. I feel like the Jayhawks could have played Ohio State last year, and I'm convinced they could have competed with them because this team showed absurd resilience and competitiveness last year. Again, they knocked off 3 of the best teams in the conference that, halted their season pretty much with either great defense or just blatantly outscoring them. That was last year's team. Now they only replace a handful of starters, but Leopold is a great coach, and they will be tough once again. Results might not be ideal, but they would have won the Big 12 last year if they would have been better in those one-score games early on, Nick, and they didn't struggle. There's no doubt about that. I think this team would have been great. And they could have even beat Arizona State, who they lost to early on in the season. So if they can certainly learn to manage games when they're tighter, and it comes down to game management, they can do damage. But I think 2025 will certainly be different. I think 7-5, a very respectable mark, quality defense, and an offense that's going to have nice balance, led by a quarterback who I assume will be better. He's also got a really good offensive line in front of him. So, Nick, what Leopold built at Kansas is great for fitting into this conference, and I think that's going to result in another postseason appearance.
Yeah, this team at 6-6, but I think it's still a good team. I think this team's better than a 6-6 record, but I just have them at that based off the schedule. I think they're going to lose at Kansas State in the rivalry game on October 25th. Tough to play Manhattan sometimes. I think there are some high upside parts of this team. I think Daniels is a good player at quarterback. I like what the running back room / running game can do. I think the run defense is also a very strong unit. The linebacking core, I like what they can do as well. Leopold's a hell of a coach, right? He ended up going 109-6 at Wisconsin Whitewater. That's right, 109-6 with a plethora of national titles at the D3 level, 6 of them, as well as a loss in the national title game another season. He went to Buffalo, a program that was also down in the dumps. He got them to a 10-4 season, 3 bowl games, that is, also a bowl game in 2019, was really competitive in the MAC, took him to the conference title game twice at that moment in time. And then he ends up at Kansas, grabbing a bottom of the barrel program that was completely lost under Les Miles, and he's starting to bring them back. It's a 2-10 season, but steady improvement since then, 6-7, 9-4, 2 bowl games in 22 and 23. A bit of a regression last year, but that doesn't really show the full story because they played a lot of close games and beat some good teams. Don't be shocked if this team ends up winning 7-8 games if they find a way to upset some of these teams on their schedule. I do like the direction they're going under Leopold, a hell of a coach. I think the new stadium upgrade should look phenomenal this year. They put a lot of money and effort into that to get this team competitive on all levels. Kansas is no longer just a basketball school. They also have a pulse, and a strong one at that, in football for the long term. 6-6 for me, but I think the future is very bright in Lawrence.
That's it for today's episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.